Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Prog Report podcast interview. We have the honor of speaking with the great Jakko Jakszyk. Hope I'm saying the last name here correctly, who is here to talk about his new album, Son of Glen, which comes out on Inside Out Music on June 27th. And joining us is Geoff Bailie as well, who Geoff is joining us because Geoff wrote the wonderful review of Jakko's book last year, which we want to talk about, Who's the Boy with the Lovely Hair?
Oh, that's fantastic. That was really lovely. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, no, you're welcome. I was showing Roie. This arrived today.
Blimey. Where did you get that? Second hand somewhere?
So I must have put it into an eBay search at one point, and then, you know, it emails you going, there's one of these copies here. So
wow.
I managed to get it. So having read the book, I'm kind of been trying to find a lot of these things, which are so difficult to find, you know. So
yeah, I'm highly collectible.
Well, this didn't break the bank. The postage was more expensive than the actual album, so
as is the case these days with that stuff.
No, look, it's good to talk, and I suppose Jakko, starting question for me, having read the book and sort of looked through your discography, obviously the theme of your kind of origins has been a thread, you know, right the way through an awful lot of your you know, a lot of your career, from the Road to Ballina, you know, radio play, through to the show you did at the Edinburgh Fringe, through to the book. And now it's part of this album. You know, do you want to talk about how that story has kind of been an influence throughout your career?
Well, the cheesy response would be to quote Neil Innes. You remember Neil Innes? It was a great line of his I was always very fond of, which was, "I've suffered for my art, now it's your turn."
That's great.
And I was saying to somebody earlier that I was chatting to Steve Wilson, and Steve said to me, he said, I can't write songs like you write, because, you know, he had a very nice, normal home life upbringing, and he said, you know, I don't have any of that kind of emotional need to kind of, you know, to express all this stuff like you do, which is why I write songs about serial killers. So and it's a cliche, isn't it, that you should write about what you know, and it is an extraordinary story, and it's almost like it's somebody else's story, you know. Yeah. Because the, you know, the bits that aren't directly about me, you know, my adoptive father's story alone is incredible. If you know, as you've read the book, you know, it's someone who was Polish but was conscripted into the German army because his dad was German, and as you've seen in the book, there's pictures of him in Nazi uniform, and he got captured by the French resistance, where he managed to persuade them that he wasn't German, he was Polish, and he ended up in Italy fighting against the Germans for the Polish Free Army. So that's nuts, right? And all of it is an exploration, and it's a way of trying to make sense of it, I guess, you know. And the sands kept moving. I think that's one of the aspects of the book, is that idea that, you know, it's about identity, and it's about security and abandonment, and throughout my life you think, oh, okay, now I know, it's this. And then, you know, a few years later, somebody comes and pulls the rug out from underneath you. So I think that's, you know, my obsession with that aspect of it, I think, has probably perpetuated the, you know, writing stuff about that, and you know, and there's conflict and there's resolution, and, you know, there's a number of songs about the you know, the relationship I have with my father, and how that resolved itself in later life, and why. And I think it's been interesting, you know, where you write songs in a kind of as if they are a diary entry, and then now you can. In fact, I did this twice in one of the book reading things I did, and the effect was really quite extraordinary. Where I said that, and I said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the book about this story. And the moment I chose was the last time I saw my adoptive mother. And then so I read that, and then I said, and this is the song I wrote about it. And then I played the song, and I thought that was a really interesting thing. It ruined everybody's afternoon, of course. People were sobbing.
And in terms of, I suppose, in terms of putting together this album, do you go into that going, right, I'm gonna write this, or are you someone who's kind of writing, at various times, and then you have enough that you want to start shaping it, or how does that work?
Well, no, it didn't. I mean, what happened on this record was the label having, taken up the option to get me to make another record. I was kind of, I was doing bits and pieces, and I collected snippets when I was on tour, recordings I made on my phone in backstage somewhere in Germany, or, in a hotel room in Japan or whatever. And I was slowly putting it up, but I didn't feel particularly inspired by it. But at the same time, I was helping to make an album for the very lovely Louise Patricia Crane, and that got me doing things on her record that were part of me, but that I don't normally do. I've not really utilized in my own recordings. So that was an interesting thing, and an interesting idea to approach it. And then she was unbelievably encouraging when I thought I'd lost all confidence, really. And she built me back up. And then one evening we were chatting about having found my real father, really not that long ago, 3 years ago. She brought up the fact, she said, look, you exist because your dad was stationed in England, and he met a dark-haired Irish singer who he fell in love with. Can you see there's a similarity here? And I thought, oh my God, I hadn't even crossed my mind. And that really was the way in. So that I started writing a song based on that idea that we discussed. And both my kids play, so there's guitars lying around the house, and they're into all these tunings, which I'm not really into. And I picked up one. I don't really know what tuning it was in, but I came up with the opening figure on that tune, and then it just developed into this kind of 10-minute epic. And then we discussed it further and said, well, look, this could be a companion piece to the book, So it became, there are certain bits of the book that are relevant to the songs that are on the album. So that's how it came about. It's a bit more chaotic than a kind of, a purposely thought out narrative before we even started.
Cool.
Musically, did the lyrics and the content drive how you were writing musically on it? Because I mean the title track is this long 10-minute, very progressive kind of piece, which you're known for. That's a part of your side of music. But then a lot of the other songs on the record are maybe a bit more song oriented and not 10 minutes, a bit shorter. What drove the style?
It's a bit of both, I think. I'm trying to think now. I knew what I wanted to write about in a way that frequently I haven't. I think sometimes the lyrics come out of the music, but this was very specific about, well, I want to write a song about my childhood. And I wrote, there's one song I wrote on guitar, and I never do that normally. It's normally a keyboard based, and then the guitar parts go on afterwards. But I think it's a bit of both, and then you start, you're sculpting it, aren't you? And you're tweaking it. So you're tweaking we live in a digital recording world where nothing is ever it's not like when you're committing stuff to tape, in the digital world, the composition and the production are malleable right up to the very end. You can continually keep changing things or adding things, so it becomes more like a kind of sculpture, I think. So, but yeah, that's my recollection of it. I kind of knew what I wanted to write songs about in a way that I don't. I think.
Yeah. Well, we also have the video for Son of Glen, which just came out, And originally the song was released, and then this sort of more elaborate kind of video production was put together for the single. Do you want to talk about the video? Were you involved in the process of putting that one together?
Well, yeah, that also came out of a rather chaotic set of circumstances. A good friend of mine said, "Look, I'll do a video for you." And there's a guy called Richard Turner, who is an award-winning kind of he does images, visuals, computers. He worked for Roger Waters for 20 years, so he won an award for his big stadium version of The Wall, which was all computer generated rather than the physical bricks and stuff. And he works at that kind of high level. And the last couple of years, he's been in Las Vegas with Adele, doing Adele. And so he came over to do this video, and we erected green screen here in the studio. And we came up with a basic idea because we had those photos of my real father from the 50s. So, you know, I dressed up like him. I got one of those American Air Force shirts and a tie. And then Richard was gonna edit it because he said he was doing a job where he'd have plenty of time. It was a stadium tour, and then there was a big technical issue. So then he brought in this other guy, Lawrence, who I'd never met before, was much younger, and Lawrence was lumbered with this. Suddenly got lumbered with this because it's, you know, as you point out, it's not a 3-minute pop song; it's bloody over 10 minutes long. So bless him, Lawrence did some amazing things, and he utilised some of my lip syncing and some of the movement of Louise as motion capture. So that, you know, so he was using AI in that context where. You know, there's a bit of the early on where there's a picture of my mother from '57 and a picture of Louise, which a mate of mine kind of made as a montage, and then using the movement, he animates it. So Louise looks at my mum, and then my mum looks back at her, which has really freaked me out when I first saw it. And then there's stuff of my dad who's moving, and then at the end they're using my lip sync to make it look like he's singing the song I've written about him. Yeah. So. Yeah, it came, the video for various reasons I can't bore you with it. The video came out considerably later than it was meant to, because it's very complicated and it's long, and there was a whole technical issue with it.
But Jakko, if you were describing the sort of the style of music on the album to someone who had never heard it, I guess, you know, I mean, you've been in bands since you were 16 years old. People will know you from King Crimson. How would you describe the overall sound of the album?
Wow, I don't know. I'm not sure it's my position to describe it. I don't know. I can hear, you know, as I said, there's influences that I utilised on Louise's record that I've now utilised on this. There's some early Genesis-y things in there that you know, it was a band that I used to go and see. In fact, I saw them probably more times. The Peter Gabriel version, saw more times than any other band, I think. You know, in my teens. Yeah. So there's an element of that. There's hopefully an element of songcraft. There's some guitar playing. There's a bit of, you know, the opening track is me writing it. That's me going to Ballina for the first time and being touched, and me, you know, the risk of it sounding like an American tourist cliche, you know, that finding, you know, having been brought up in this rather empty and austere household with, you know, with a stern Polish father, suddenly finding myself in Ireland, I suddenly thought, oh no, this makes sense. You know, I felt like, oh my God, this is, you know, I relate to these people. There's a sense of humor, wearing their heart on the sleeves and everything. So that it opens up with that piece I wrote for Low Whistle and Shadow. So I don't know. There's there probably isn't much self-conscious kind of Crimson on this record as there was in the previous one, but I'm not sure I thought about it in those terms either. What came out, I guess.
I mean, it's an incredibly eclectic album. You know, people will know you as well from your, you know, your production side, and it's just beautifully sounding. I think it's a real journey, and it's a real variety of styles and textures. You obviously have various guest musicians taking part. Do you want to talk a little bit about who else is on the album?
Well, yeah, there's a lot less guests than there has been on my last few albums. So, yeah, Gavin Harrison plays drums on the title track, and of course, I've known Gavin since the early '80s, really.
Yeah.
And Gavin's just about my best mate. Although, to be fair, he's at pains to point out that I'm not his best mate. And so he plays drums, and I'm also pally, partly because he lives nearby. I'm quite pally with the guys, a couple of the guys in Marillion, because they live near me here in Hertfordshire. And yeah, so I hang out with Ian, the drummer mostly, and I don't know. I think we went for a curry or coffee, and he offered to play on it, and I said, "Oh, that would be great." So he plays drums on one track. There's a cellist called Caroline Lavelle who I've worked with before, who's brilliant. She does her own solo stuff. She's a great singer as well. Louise sings on the title track, and my son plays bass on virtually all of it. And which is A is a lovely thing to do. B kind of ties in with the nature of the record and the connection, and that's him in the video as well. And he's great. He's got a great feel. He's got a great ear, and he's cheap and local.
Well, it's funny because the first time I listened to the album, the bass playing actually really stood out to me. And obviously,
great.
you've worked with Danny Thompson, Tony Levin, the legend, and I sort of looked and went, I wonder who he's got on this, and I was really surprised to see that it was Django actually who played, and I mean it's great stuff, really really good.
No, he's great. He's got great sound. You know what? I've been really lucky. When you think about the bass players I've worked with, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Nick Kahn, Mark King, John Giblin, Tony Levin. Fucking hell, just some of the, and of course Danny Thompson.
Yeah, excellent.
Do you see any opportunity to play some of this music live? Are you trying to put something together?
Well, you're kind of in the back of my head. I guess I don't have any. I mean, I'd like to, but I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any thirst for coming to see me play live. I don't know. I said to somebody earlier, with King Crimson, I can go to Santiago in Chile and sell out 2 nights at a stadium that holds 12,000 people. But if I go there on my own, there's no guarantee 12 people will turn up. So I don't have any. I've got no idea really. I mean, I'd like to do it, but it requires me. Yeah, I have been thinking about it of late, but but there's no concrete plan. But I would love to be able to do it. I did one. I've only played live as myself once in the last 30 odd years, and that was with I did the cruise in 2022, and I had the Zappa band as my talk about
Right,
but that became a nightmare because Mike Keneally, who I love dearly and is a genius, at the last minute he told me that he'd had to take this other gig, and the last gig was the night before we left, which meant we couldn't rehearse, so we didn't rehearse at all. So we were rehearsing in front of and of course there's mistakes everywhere, and funnily enough, I think. I got quite relaxed about it because there was nothing I could do. It wasn't like we'd rehearsed and people were making mistakes. It was like, and it was great fun. It was great banter with the crowd, and I had great banter with Scott Tunes, the bass player, and because we'd got to know them. They opened for us on the last tour or some of the last tour in America, and Gavin and I guested with them on 2 shows, which was a blast. It was the highlight of the whole tour, really. To come out and play a Zappa tune with those guys, it was fantastic.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So if I may, I'd love to ask the Crimson question.
Yes.
Obviously, things there was the last show in Tokyo. Different people have mentioned online that they've been, or different band members have been mentioned looking at some of the material that was written, in that latter period with the live shows. Are there any plans for any of that material to get realized and get released?
Yeah, it's part of what I've been doing today. We're putting together a studio album
Oh wow.
of all that material. So we've recorded studio versions of all of those things. Exactly when or how that stuff comes out, I don't know. That's not in my remit. And I went up to where Robert and David, who's both Crimson's manager, Robert's business partner, and he does production and sound stuff himself. So I had a day up there to discuss that, to discuss the re-release of. We've done a really interesting re-release of Scarcity of Miracles, which is the album I made with Robert before I joined Crimson.
Yeah.
And that's got loads of unheard stuff, lots of variations and we were going to discuss stuff going forwards in the evening. But when I drove up there, it's a bit of a drive for me from here. It was only when I got there that I'd heard Robert had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Right.
But he seems. I had an exchange with Robert last week. He seems okay. He's had 2 stents put in, but exactly how that will affect what, if anything, we do going forward, I don't know. Because I guess those things are there's a huge psychological element to that, isn't there? So
Sure. Yeah.
But no. So yeah, we're definitely recording it. If and when it comes out, and in what format and how, that's a whole other conversation to be had with somebody other than me. But we're in the process of getting on with that. Yeah.
Great. Good.
Very, very cool. I do want to ask, just sort of as a follow-up to close things out here. This album sort of seems like it came about maybe almost as a surprise. Maybe something you weren't looking to do, and I'm wondering how you look at it now as maybe an important part of the journey you started with the book and everything, and if it helps with sort of the closure of the book that maybe you didn't know or were expecting.
Yeah, I don't know about closure, but it is that thing that I talked about earlier. The kind of musical version of some of the concepts and stories and narrative of the book. As I say, it kind of it gathered momentum, and I worked pretty insane hours to get it finished, because I was doing that in tandem with I've just done the audiobook as well. And the audiobook is the book. Well, you've read the book, Geoff, so you know how fucking long it is, and so it took me ages. So I was doing this mad thing earlier on in the year where I would come into the studio by about 9 a.m, work till about 6, and then I'd stay out here and I would record 2 or 3 chapters of the book, and I would do it kind of warts and all, mistakes, gaps, retakes, everything, just as one long bit of audio. And then I'd put it on a hard drive, and then I'd take it into the house, and then because I'm an old man, I would wake up at 4:30, desperate to go to the loo, and instead of going back to sleep, I'd then edit the chapters that I'd recorded the night before. So I did that consistently over a few weeks to get it all done. But when I eventually finished the audiobook and I put all the files, aligned them together just to see how long the whole thing lasted, and it's nearly 17 hours long.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, the book is, the book, you've been involved in so much, things right across comedy, music, your family story through it. It's a fascinating story, and I would, I guess some people might think, just a muso's, hoary old anecdotes of, backstage antics. It's way more than that. And if reading a big thick book isn't your thing, I know a lot of people enjoy audiobooks and listening to them on the go. So we'll definitely give that a plug whenever that comes out, for sure.
Well, that'd be great. And thank you so much for your compliments on the book. It's meant a great deal to me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Well, any man who's endured a soccer match at Dundela deserves kudos.
Yeah, the ball was in the air quite a lot, I seem to remember.
Yeah. This is a football pitch in Belfast, Roie, that is notorious for the fact that it slants downwards.
Nice. Well, Jakko, awesome talking to you, man. Congrats on the album, the book, and everything going on. Again, Son of Glen, the new album is out on June 27th. Please go check it out. There's a great video out now, which hopefully you heard us talk about. It's really cool. Check it out. It's Son of Glen out now, and I think it's on the Inside Out YouTube channel. And yeah, you can pre-order the album now. All right, man. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
All right, bye. Bye. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all our socials and progreport.com. And we'll see you all again real soon. Thanks.